Hacker Plus podcast membership. This is our weekly quest call inside that membership. Welcome to brand new members that are joining us this week. We're really excited you're here. And we're going to get started into talking about this week, the ENFJ personality type. Jonathan Harden is with us as a co-host. Antonia Dodge is with us. I'm Joel Mark Witt. Producing today is Karina Gunyon. Jonathan, you are an ENFJ. So you're here to give us all the secrets about what ENFJs are like, I suppose.
Yeah. You know, I was thinking the first infographic I got from you guys back in like 2016, there was like a simple infographic you did for Hack, how to grow your Copilot for each type.
Yeah.
And I remember, I think at the time I was like, sure, I was an ENFP because my house was a mess. Very low level thinking, but at the time, that's the type I was settled on. But when I got to the ENTJ, ENFJ, grow your Copilot, it was about be still, get quiet, meditate. And I remember being a little repulsed by that, thinking like, oh no, there's so much to get done. I can't have time to meditate. I don't have time to be quiet. I resisted that change for quite a while, but the present me is much more wiser than the past me, gratefully. So
fair enough.
You've entered your Zen, like you've embraced.
I found the footing of Zen that I like. Yeah, so I have become more Zen, I would say so.
Is it Zen adjacent?
Yeah, probably.
You hesitate to say full on Zen. It's like,
well, I think it's because I can get into action like so quickly, and like if there's a fire, I can respond to it so quickly. So
yeah,
I have to be mindful that little like heightened stimulation, like if the loudest noise or the shiniest object, I tend to be drawn to. So I have to be very mindful that I'm. That's an easy hook for me.
Yeah. Fair enough.
You're just joining us, by the way. Welcome to our Personality Quest call. It's part of a broader membership, Personality Hacker Plus membership here at Personality Hacker. These Quest calls happen every Sunday right now at 11:45 Eastern time. We gather together. One of the things that Antonia and I've been doing since 2014, we've been publishing every single week a Personality Hacker podcast. And we thought, you know what? We do this for 10 years. A lot of people would probably appreciate gathering together, tuning into some core content around the podcast and unpacking how it can apply to our lives. Like, let's take this and augment it. Let's make it more real for us. So I appreciate all the members that are gathering in the Zoom call. We're also, just for this portion, when we first start out, when we play the short clip, we're going to have it going to like some live streams. So if you might be watching us on live stream, we'd love to have you part of this membership. You can do that over at personalityhacker.com/quest to join this membership and be part of the discussion. What we're going to do here today, we're going to play a short clip from the most recent podcast that's going to be released later today. The ENFJ self-love, how ENFJs can show themselves love. We're going to play a short clip from that. Talk a little about ENFJs, but there's also a portion in the podcast talking about what the rest of us can learn from ENFJs showing themselves love. So you might be an ENFJ today. I've invited a few ENFJs as special guests just to come and be part of this today to give extra value to our community and audience. So welcome to you if you're part of the Quest call this week as a one-off. I'm excited you're joining us as a quick taste of what we do each week together. After we watch the clip, we're going to give a breakout room prompt. People are going to go into breakout rooms, small groups, so everyone gets a chance to meet new people like minds. We have people from all over the world joining us. I think we have people from Africa, Asia, like Europe, here in the United States, obviously. So we've got people joining us from all over. So you get to meet different people of like minds from all over the planet in these small group discussions. And then we come back and we share in the broader context. We do a little bit of journal prompt. And we just find an action that week, something we can maybe go and explore in the world, some challenge, something we can do. And it's a great 90 minutes together every week, tuning into what can we apply to our lives and how can we change and grow as people. So thank you all for being here. I think I'm ready to kind of jump into this clip, Jonathan. I think it's a little bit longer because there's some content we wanted to get. Usually these are like 10, 12 minutes. This one I think is about 20 minutes. If we jump into it, I think that'll be good because then we can get to the discussion part right after. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Does that sound good to you? All right. So, by the way, Joel Mark Witt, Antonia Dodge, Jonathan Harden, producing today is Karina Gunyon. I'm going to see if I can broadcast this from my laptop. We're going to watch this together, come back, and we'll give the breakout room prompt. Hang tight.
So you already mentioned that harmony driver process. Mm-hmm. Let's jump into that even more. So this is the part of you as an ENFJ, or if you have an ENFJ in your life, there's a lot of capacity here. This is part of you have natural talent for. And if you build skill, I mean, this is basically like the water you swim in. This as an ENFJ, this is the gift you bring to the world.
Yeah. All ENFJs have talent here.
Yeah.
not all ENFJs have built skill here. And this is the, in our friend Dr. John Beebe's model, this is part of what he calls the axis of relating to self. So while it is a relationship building function, relationships being that the function itself of extroverted feeling or harmony, it's focused on the energy between people. You could call it rapport, right? What are the energetic signals that people are sending to each other back and forth? And that is the basis for what you could call interpersonal intelligence, right? The energy that people, all that communication that people are doing, the subterranean communication, the energies we're bringing, how people are relating to each other, interpersonal dynamics.
It's the vibe.
Right.
It's the vibe between folks, right?
And it goes all the way from two people who are vibing at a party and talking up to entire cultures and civilizations are all built on interpersonal dynamics. So this is a function that understands that's its field, right? That is its field of interest and its field of talent. When somebody with ENFJ preferences relies primarily on talent, they get really good at making people like them, getting into rapport with people, building friendships, casual acquaintances. They usually have a lot of those. They're the kind of people who oftentimes report that others will open up to them, people that they don't know very well, because they just have this, it's almost like a safe energy around interpersonal dynamics. They like being in a vibe with people. They like being in rapport. So they tend to open themselves up to it. And so this is a function that somebody with ENFJ preferences needs to have higher expectations for themselves than merely talent. They need to develop skill on top of it. And one of the reasons why somebody with ENFJ preferences might not build skill is that the world around them is happy with the talent that they bring, right? The ability to create rapport. They won't get a lot of feedback from other people that they need to do better because they're usually doing pretty good, right? Just on talent alone. And if we're talented at something, we usually have built some skill around it, right? It's interesting to us. Topics that are related to it are usually topics that we seek. So it's very rare when somebody with ENFJ preferences has like no skill developed. But in order for somebody with ENFJ preferences to not have this be an obstruction to experiencing love from themselves, they need to be building a level of skill where their inner wisdom, the inner self, knows that they're doing the best job that they can, meaning that they're not leaving money on the table, that they're not just allowing rapport building to be enough, that they're not just allowing their ability to get people to like them or to have these casual relationships or casual acquaintances, or even the ability to kind of take care of people around them be enough.
The reason why is it erodes self-trust. It erodes a sense of self. If you have an inkling or a talent for capacity that you're not building skill toward, you're going to always go, man, I could do better. Like it might even be unconscious. And then the other parts of you, we'll talk about that accuracy part of you is going to come in. You could do better. It's going to tell you too. Other parts are going to tell you this. Plus the extroverted feeling of harmony part is going to be like, yeah, we could do better. We could stretch ourselves here. And so a proper relationship, what I hear you saying then, a proper relationship for an ENFJ to have with themselves is to say, I need to be doing all I can from this place.
Yes.
I have tons of certainty here. I have tons of capacity. I can build tons of skill. If I don't, I bet I'm eroding my abilities for self-love.
Exactly. And especially since this is part of the relationship to self.
Yeah.
Even though it understands interpersonal relationships with others, it's still a lot of your self-esteem comes from how well you're doing this function. So some ways that it shows up when a person relies mostly on talent and not as much skill development is it's a lot of superficial connections. It's an over-reliance on social validation. So the approval and disapproval of other people, which can create a bit of a fragile self-esteem, right? Kind of a brittle self-esteem, honestly.
Well, it screws up your boundaries because you don't have strong boundaries if you're looking for approval.
That's exactly it. It also usually shows up as struggling with boundaries between people, right? And having personal boundaries, because if you're really in tune with the energy between two people, if you are picking up energies from others, one of the things that extroverted feeling or harmony really hones in on is this person okay? Because if they're pumping out not good energy, Well, then that person needs to be caretaken, right? Like something needs to be done. There's a need going unmet. How do we meet that need? And especially since they're going to be pinging off of other people. And if emotions are contagious, which is something that extroverted feeling or harmony very much understands, is that an emotion can be contagious, right? Somebody walks into a room full of people having a great time and they bring this like Eeyore-like energy. Well, they might throw a wet blanket over everything. So this function gets really good at understanding when a need is going unmet, and then usually takes it upon themselves to try to meet it if at all possible, to make sure everybody's good if we're all going to be in a vibe. If it's a talent, not a skill, and one feels compelled to help meet those needs, though, it can become difficult to not just find yourself over-serving, right? Kind of over-giving in an emotional realm. And then going, well, I'm doing all this work. Why aren't people seeing it? Because a lot of the times the work that's being done, people only notice when it stops, right?
Yeah.
Because it's not a lot of like, you can point to the outcome. The outcome is an improved mood, or the outcome is a better experience for everyone, but they might not know that you did that work. So when you only rely on talent, but don't build a lot of skill, or don't build as much skill as is possible when it's a driver or what's technically called a dominant function, then you can get into a place where you feel that everybody's taking. So you create these one-sided relationships and you're not receiving as much. It also shows up as conflict avoidance, right? And it can also show up as a bit of an assumption that you know what's right for the greater good, even if others can't see it. So you might justify doing things like maybe even overreaching in order to do things for the greater good.
So high capacity, tons of expectation for an ENFJ here. What is it? So an ENFJ is watching or listening right now, what could they expect of themselves then?
So when the function is well developed and skill is developed, a lot of times it looks like setting healthy boundaries, right? Understanding that sometimes a need has to go unmet for a time, right? Sometimes it's okay if somebody experiences that. They're learning that they need to meet their own needs, right? And so it can be a greater distinction between a need going unmet and whether or not you yourself as the person with ENFJ preferences is the person that must meet that need. Like there are times when it's okay that not everything feels good. It's okay when there's a disruption in the force, so to speak. It's an ability to understand the importance of conflict, not conflict avoidance, but actually, turning the earth over and being willing to see it directly, see that conflict directly in order to create true harmony. It's understanding the higher ethic of what it really means to be harmonious. Does it mean that everybody likes everybody else? Does it mean that everybody's getting along all the time? Or does it mean that there's a whole symphony of people, and sometimes in that symphony, people are playing discordant notes, and that's okay because it doesn't necessarily throw the song off. Sometimes it actually creates a more interesting, music if things are a little discordant. So it's almost seeing yourself as an orchestra conductor and understanding that there are different things going on at different times, and that's okay, right? We don't all have to be on the same page all the time. And I, as the ENFJ, which I don't have ENFJ preferences, but let's pretend for the sake of the sentence I do, I, as the ENFJ, do not have to always be the person making it all okay. I can create some good boundaries for myself, and I can include in my understanding of relationship to self. I can put myself in that equation. I don't have to just be on the receiving end of approval and disapproval. I can also be the person who is approving and disapproving other people, right? I'm a part of that equation. And an elevated level of this function means understanding some of these nuances, understanding that sometimes things just have to roll out the way they roll out.
I think a lot of times INFJs and ENFJ, well, anybody that has harmony, when they talk about boundaries and borders, boundaries, basically creating boundaries, it's all about the energy being held out. I mean, that's how it's usually talked about, but I don't want us to lose sight of, and a lot of NFJs or harmony people know this as well, that it also is a distinction maker of where I am and where I stop and where somebody else begins. So it's not just about the permeability, that'd be the right word, right? The ability to pass back and forth the energy and the boundary of like, you can't let that energy in because it's toxic or whatever. It's about stopping energy, but it's also knowing where I end and where I start and stop.
Right.
And I think the thing about this is it gives you a sense of self. I think that's the point I'm trying to make is boundaries. A lot of ENFJs will say, I don't know what I want. I don't know what's important to me. I don't know where I start and stop. And with this function and the expectation of this harmony process for you as an ENFJ, not only will you be able to have a better handle, I wouldn't say control, but a better mechanism for allowing or disallowing certain energies to come into your life.
Yes.
Better boundaries there in relationships, but it also gives you a sense of, okay, this is me. This is the boundary of my sovereign territory of who I am as a person. And I think that gives you access to self-love. It's almost like you're creating a protection around yourself. Like, this is my space. This is my inner world. This is my terrain. Don't step on it. This is me. I'm showing myself love by creating boundaries for myself. And I know where I am in those boundaries. And I think that's a part that maybe gets missed in all of that because it seems so defensive and protective, which it can be. But I think it's very positive in that it leads you to a sense of who you are through those boundaries.
Right. And they don't have to be hard.
That's right.
They don't, like you said, they don't have to be defensive when this
I mean, negotiable, like over time.
Exactly. There's a negotiation at all times. And there's a sense of no harm, no foul.
Yeah.
Like if a person overextends and hits a boundary and you didn't communicate it, well, there's a sense of like, well, I guess I should have communicated my boundary, or this didn't come up before. So now I'm going to communicate it.
Yeah.
And if the person respects it, then I don't have to be upset with them. I just go, okay, well, this is a boundary of mine. But there's not going to be a lot of, I want to say, synthetic boundaries, right? There's also going to be an understanding of the importance of giving.
Yeah.
So there won't be like like right now I see a lot of really harsh boundaries put up in the world around like, well, I don't owe you anything, right? There's like this sense of like, if somebody talks to you, well, I don't owe you conversation. Well, really well done extroverted feeling or harmony knows that that we are civil because it's not because it's owed, but because it creates a better world, right? Like there's a, like, well, so you talked to me and I didn't want you talking to me. You're creepy, so get away from me. It's kind of like, well, no, extroverted feeling or harmony goes, just because we're talking to each other doesn't mean you're crossing a boundary. Just because a person, and like if I don't have the time for it right now, or I'm just having a moment to myself and with my headphones or whatever, I can communicate that, right? And I can go, actually, I'm kind of having a me day right now. So thank you so much for the conversation. But I think I'm going to kind of go back into my own little space here because I think I need to be in relationship to myself right now or whatever, like letting the other person down in the nicest way possible.
Yeah.
It's not an aggressive stance, but at the same time, it's not allowing people to take too much. It's not allowing other people to cross boundaries and then later on get upset that they crossed a boundary, or get upset with yourself that you allowed other people to cross a boundary. It's it's just kind of an understanding that this is all very complicated, right? Interpersonal dynamics are very complicated, which is why it's considered its own form of intelligence in Gardner's multiple intelligence model. Like there's a lot going on here. And when it's elevated, there's a sense like this is my domain and I don't have to get upset around any of this. I can just kind of negotiate and navigate through all of this. I can help other people negotiate and navigate their relationships. And I can create a true sense like of harmony, like a real sense of harmony, that we're all sort of in this dance. And it's not very choreographed, right? And we can just sort of energetically dance with each other. And sometimes I dance closer, and sometimes I dance further away, and I do so with a heightened sense of diplomacy.
Yeah.
Right? There's a lot of diplomacy that comes in when this is a well-developed function, and there's also a high amount of ability to persuade other people to do what's in their best interest, to persuade people to have good relationships with each other. And through all of that, a lot of leadership can come up as well. Like particularly anything that has to do with teamwork. There's the highest form, or some of the highest forms of developing this function, is using it in leadership and really compelling people to take actions that are in everybody's best interest while maintaining this sense of equilibrium.
Yeah.
And so when somebody with ENFJ preferences doesn't develop this function to a higher order, doesn't do as much as they can with all of this natural talent for interpersonal dynamics, they can feel it. It's like they can feel they're leaving money on the table. Like in a relationship with somebody else, you see them have all this talent and they just waste it.
Yeah.
You're kind of disappointed for them. And when somebody with ENFJ preferences does the same, they waste this extraordinary talent of interpersonal dynamics, the self kind of feels a little disappointed, right? And goes, no, I think we could be doing better. And that is sometimes an obstruction to receiving the love we're trying to send to ourselves, is that we're wasting something that helps us understand the best of ourselves.
Yeah. So let's talk about what we can learn. The rest of us, the other 15 types, can learn from an ENFJ's framework of self-love. So again, just to review, we're tuning into the personality types of all 16 types, looking at that as an axis of self-love. And we use the framework of, if you were in a relationship with somebody, you would give love freely without condition, but the relationship dynamic does have conditions. So love doesn't have conditions, but the relationship between you and another person and other people has conditions to it. That's what a relationship is. It has unspoken and spoken contracts between people. It can go all the way up to like a formal contract, like marriage, or just a unspoken, like, hey, we're friends, we're hanging out, right? And we don't really talk about it, but it's understood between us. So that's how relationships work. And the same thing with ourselves. We have a relationship with ourselves and we're attempting all the time. The premise is to send love to ourselves. There's obstructions in the way. And we believe that proper expectations can help us understand what's the right relationship with ourselves based on our personality, so we can then freely give ourselves love. Now, we also believe that love is a verb. It has action with it. It's not something I say. I can say I love you all day long, but unless I show it with actions, you're not going to probably believe me, Antonia, right? I think this is how it works in relationships. So loving ourselves requires action. It's not just enough to say, I love myself, and wear like a nice bling t-shirt that, you know, how awesome I am, to reinforce self-talk. Those can be great, but self-talk isn't enough. It requires us to just like in a real relationship, talk isn't enough. Talk is cheap. It requires us to demonstrate the love. It's a verb. It requires us to show action. So we also have that frame.
Yeah.
So as we tune into the ENFJ and we're talking about how they can love themselves, what's the principle that the rest of us can draw from this?
Well, first I want to do a really quick recap, because I'm so glad you said that. So just as a recap, here are the expectations. The expectations is that your driver function, have high expectations for it. Push it harder.
It's for everybody, not just ENFJs.
Exactly.
It's a framework.
But for ENFJs, their extroverted feeling of harmony, don't let yourself get away with being likable. Don't allow yourself to just get away with seeing people's needs and meeting them. Build good boundaries, become diplomatic, understand that there is a bigger picture going on. Recognize that that you have more inside of yourself here, particularly leadership opportunities, and don't let yourself off the hook. Otherwise, your inner wisdom will be disappointed. For your intuition, your perspectives, your introverted intuition function, your co-pilot, have high expectations of how you're going to both serve others and yourself. This is a major part of you, how you contribute to the world. So set higher expectations of service through this, and make sure that you're putting yourself in that equation, that you're not just creating an intuitive vision for others, but also for the self. When you get to the 10-year-old function, extroverted sensing or sensation, you need to have more reasonable expectations. You don't have limitless energy. You don't pick up everything. You don't see everything. You can't always control other people's impressions of you, and you don't always have the right impression of other people on first glance. So recognize that you need to have more reasonable expectations here, that sometimes you can be a bit overindulgent. Sometimes you can bite off more than you can chew. Sometimes you don't have limitless energy like you were hoping. But if you use it in behalf of your intuition, now you have a powerhouse of two functions that can really serve the world in a beautiful way and give yourself a ton of a sense of contribution that comes with also a lot of fun. And by the time you get to that thinking function, the 3-year-old, introverted thinking or accuracy, you really need to set your expectations accordingly. Like, this is a part of you that if you think that you're supposed to outclass everybody else in this function, like you're supposed to show up in this incredible way, you're going to demoralize yourself. You just have a preference for social harmony over radical honesty. You just do. But that doesn't mean you can't also be honest. It doesn't mean that you can't show up in an analytic way. It doesn't mean that you don't have logic. It just means that if you set too high of expectations for yourself here, you're going to end up criticizing yourself constantly, and it's going to feel very demoralizing. So set reasonable expectations and use it as a support structure and in behalf of your feeling function of harmony, of extroverted feeling. And when those two functions are being used in tandem, then you can have a lot of self-compassion while you're also being honest with yourself.
Well, and I think that audit, that 3-year-old part of you is an ENFJ. When you do the audit, it does it disembodied if it's doing it well.
Yes.
You can just look at your life as it is. And I think the thing that would surprise a lot of people about ENFJs is because they're usually the bombastic, energetic, I don't know if I would say life of the party, but usually they're where the party is. I mean, if there's human engagement in an extroverted way, the ENFJ can often find themselves in that dynamic, right? And that's the obvious thing that we all can see. I think the non-obvious thing about ENFJs is they have a little bit of a loner, go away from everybody, off by themselves. And we don't see that because they genuinely go off by themselves.
Right.
And we don't see them they're not sitting in the corner necessarily. That would be unacceptable because I'm supposed to be with the group right now. So if you see them in any social environment, they're probably participating in most cases if they're feeling okay. But when they're not in a social environment, the secret about a lot of ENFJs is they sneak away and they spend some alone time in a lot of quiet reflection with the self.
Yeah.
This is where those inner voices, both the perspectives part of them, that's the superpower, but that little inner critic or calibrator can come up. Integrating it, though, means that when an ENFJ goes to those quiet places and is ruminating with their intuition, that part of themselves, that's the calibrator part, is not showing up as a critic as much. It's showing up to contribute and add calibration in those quiet, reflective moments. There's always some uncertainty there, and sometimes criticism can sneak in. But usually a mature, healthy ENFJ that's done a lot of work to integrate these parts of themselves benefits greatly from that quiet. They benefit greatly from that audit.
Yes.
And I think that's something we can learn from them around self-love.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. When an ENFJ has figured out how to both give themselves love and receive love for themselves, that's exactly what's going on. And that introspective analysis, that what you could call compassionate self-inquiry, is oftentimes the source for wisdom when they're counseling others.
Yeah.
When you are hearing these pearls of wisdom come from them, this ability to like spin a narrative so that you understand the point, so you can really get what they're saying. It's usually because they have become somebody who does exactly what you're talking about. They quietly self-reflect and understand a bigger picture, understand the truth behind things, and that comes up in their mentorship and their counsel, and it's actually quite inspiring. It's not like they just came up with all that stuff immediately. They've been thinking about it. They've been brewing on it. And so I think that can be quite inspiring to others to hear the results of that compassionate self-reflection.
All right, welcome back to the Personality Quest call as part of the Personality Hacker Plus membership. We're glad you're here with us. So what do you think? We just talked about the ENFJ. We tuned into how an ENFJ can show themselves love. But we also drew out some learning that maybe the rest of us can also tune into. Jonathan, you shared a poem as we were talking about ENFJs, that boundary setting. You have ENFJ preferences. By the way, Joel Mark Witt, Antonia Dodge, Jonathan Harden. Producing today is Karina Gunyon. Welcome to all our brand new members in the private Zoom Quest call, and our guests today that are joining us as well on the live streams for a few more minutes before we end those. We are, again, talking about ENFJ. We're talking about boundaries, and you shared a poem in the chat, in the private Zoom chat, talking about when you were a child, that was an issue for you of where you stopped and where somebody else started, Jonathan.
Yeah. Yeah, the poem, I am me and you are you. I don't think and act like you. I don't sit and talk like you because I am me and you are you. Probably I was 3 or 4 and I just locked into that. And I remember too, I was thinking about this. I remember I was 4 because it was in our apartment. I remember the first time I met my reflection in the mirror and I introduced myself to myself. Because I was like, that's not me. That's my mirror reflection. I just, hi, nice to meet you. I'm Jonathan. And I just saw myself say the exact same thing back to me. And I thought, this was a really nice encounter. I hope to meet you again. So,
Encounter with self for
Mhm.
sure.
yeah, it was, yeah, it was pretty cool. So
Yeah, that's adorable. I mean, I don't know if there's anything that typifies extroverted feeling as a little kid more than introducing yourself to your own reflection,
yeah,
building a relationship with yourself in a mirror. That's perfect.
it
Yeah.
is. Yeah.
It's a great image.
Yeah.
So I can give us our journal prompt. If anybody has any more things to share before I send people into breakout rooms who are part of the membership, feel free to jump in and share anything. But I'll start to formulate these breakout rooms as we go.
Okay.
I think that is a big secret of ENFJs. Something like an 80-20 rule. If you really want to show up, you do have to accept. I mean, I've had to accept, like, I got to spend the 80% time brewing on something and
Mhm.
getting the habit of saying, you know what, I'm going to dream about this. I'm going to sleep on this.
Mhm.
Avoiding the trigger response of just, oh, I can fix this right now. I can meet this need right now. And accepting, like, oh, I need a little time to stew on this, to brew on this, to allow this to grow. And it might take some time, and trust that it's going to happen at the right time. The wisdom is going to arrive at just when I need it.
Yeah. Yeah. And yesterday, so Joel and I recently recorded the self-love, like the same series for both ENTPs and INFJs.
Coming out soon.
It's coming out soon in the next few weeks. And there was something that came up during, talking about extroverted feeling harmony for INFJs, but I think this goes doubly true for, anybody, any FJ, honestly. But ENFJs that see needs so clearly. Empathy is different than obligation. Like there's a distinction between those two things. So when one empathizes, because extroverted feeling or harmony sees emotions or feelings as actionable, right? If somebody has a need and you're empathizing with them, the instinct is to take action, is to jump into action. So creating a distinction between empathizing and feeling it and like sitting with that, or like experiencing it and feeling some sort of like instinct to jump in, but then separating it from obligation. Like, am I obligated to do that? Because I'm feeling their feeling, does this now make me obligated to do something about it? And
Yes.
if they can create a distinction between empathy and obligation, then you have a little bit more of like space to kind of reflect, to take a minute to step back and go, they're not the same thing. I cannot conflate empathy with obligation. And when I think when an ENFJ is able to create that distinction for themselves, they have a lot more opportunity for reflection and quietness, because there isn't as much of an assumption that it is your job to jump in all the time. You can take a step back, think about it, ruminate, meditate, consider things. I mean, not like, when a kid spills milk or whatever, but like, when you see somebody who's in need and you don't know their story yet and all of that.
I am so grateful for you. Just like, I mean, again, like, I'm just basking in this reflection, because just listening to y'all talk so much and bring the wisdom that I needed, and just helping me create distinctions with words like that, because that absolutely encapsulates my experience. Of just understanding that wisdom. If I could just go back to that 22-year-old self and say, there's empathy and you will feel it all.
Yeah.
And then there's your job.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
All right.
I think that's a massive distinction. So on that note, I have some breakout rooms, 3 to 4 people in each room. So if you're brand new, by the way, this could be jarring to have to go into a breakout room and meet other humans all of a sudden, but these are like minds, people that are in the Person Hacker community, listen to our podcasts, have a very similar ethos to you, most likely. So I'm letting the Zoom gods decide how people are paired up in these small breakout rooms. It's an opportunity, though, to lean forward, ask questions, share what's coming up for you, some of the perspectives. Instead of just sitting and quietly listening and absorbing, it's a way to participate, to lean forward, and to meet some new people and like minds. So we're going to open up those rooms. It's going to be 12 minutes on the clock in those rooms. And just spend those 12 minutes talking a little bit about, let me give you the breakout room prompt. Talk about the ENFJ influences in your life, people, organizations, activities. Okay, these are, and again, this isn't a typing or profiling experience. You may not actually know their personality type, but see if you can lean into the suspected ENFJ energy, whether you know it's a person's ENFJ preferences or it's somebody that kind of demonstrates this kind of energy. Tune into that in your life, and let's talk a little about how that shows up for you, what your relationship is to that.
And if you have ENFJ preferences yourself, who have been your mentors? Who have been
Yeah.
the people who have helped you become a better version, right, of those preferences
Yeah.
and helped you accelerate your maturity?
Yeah. All right. So in the breakout rooms, the person that played video games the most recently goes first. So whoever played a video game the most recently gets to go just start off and share first, and then just go from there. Okay. So we're going to open up these rooms. Excuse me. In 12 minutes, we'll come back. And we will start to open up the broader conversation in the entire group of all of us that are on the Zoom call. We're going to see everybody's faces on here and be able to share with each other and hear some things that came up from the room. We'll see everybody back here in 12 minutes. Okay, as people are going to their breakout rooms, we're going to be ending the live stream. Thanks so much for joining us wherever you're watching, whether it's Twitter and X or on YouTube or Facebook or Instagram. I think we're streaming on a bunch of different places. Thank you for tuning in today. You really should follow us into this membership and come be a part of these discussions, the journal prompts, and the entire Personality Hacker Plus podcast membership. We really take the podcast every week and we expand upon it. We have an online academy, a virtual academy of content in the membership area. Antonia has a book club that she hosts in this membership. And we also have these weekly live calls where we come together to have community touch points. So regardless if you're super extroverted and you love to come and be on these calls or tune into them live, or maybe you're just one person who likes to do home study and go into the academy and library and study on your own, that's cool too. Either avenue, Personality Hacker Plus has all of those things for you. We'd love for you to be coming along and exploring personality type with us. All right. So hopefully you learned some new things about ENFJ. Join us in the membership, personalhacker.com/quest. If you'd like to join us in that membership. Otherwise, Joel Mark Witt with Antonia Dodge signing